Thank you for coming. So for those who aren't familiar with you or your spiritual community, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Agape and the work you're doing on the planet?
I am Michael B. Bäckwith, the founder of Agape International Spiritual Center, into its 32nd year, founded in 1986. It is a community that embraces the universal spiritual principles, that when one follows these principles, their lives change for the better. It's sometimes called a healing field, where people come in and find themselves crying, healing, and coming face to face with the blockages within them in order to set themselves free. Then it becomes a birthing field, where individuals catch vision to give birth to the reason why they came to the planet in the first place. So it is a magnificent, diverse, inclusive community, probably one of the most inclusive communities on the planet, because everyone there, all walks of life, gender, ethnicity, religious background, all come to celebrate this divine presence that's never an absence, by whatever name you choose to call it. And so we seek to be the birthplace for what is described as the beloved community. And that was greatly described by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I think we're doing a good job.
I do too. So there's an energy when you go Agape. There's definitely like this, it's the most diverse crowd you see, all ages, all colors, sizes, all sexual orientation, whatever it is. There's just this beautiful community. I feel like it's like a microcosm of the world community. Yes. And I leave there feeling lighter, higher, and you can feel the energy vibrationally. Can you talk a little bit about, because this is about healing, can you talk about us as vibrational beings and how that plays into healing?
Yes, we're all vibrational beings. We've been hypnotized into thinking that we are our bodies, and we have a body, but beyond the body is who we are as unique expressions of the vibratory being that's everywhere. So everyone has a vibratory signature. And so when you come to Agape, you're tapping into the vibratory feeling of joy and connectedness and love, peace. These are real vibrations. These are real qualities. And so when you come into such a space, people are coming to celebrate what that is, rather than to beg a reluctant deity to give us anything. We're coming into Agape to celebrate what's eternally being given, growing in our receptivity of it so that we can express it. So I've been teaching for years that we're vibratory beings, and that your prayer, your meditation, your yoga, your qigong, your chanting, your dance, all of this that we do is to actually activate and lift vibrational frequencies who are actually living in the world that we want to live in even before it manifests. And so that's what you're picking up. And then, for me, many years ago, I had my first of a series of spiritual awakenings. And I could see, surrounded by a presence of love and beauty, and the intensity of the love, the intensity of the beauty was so magnificent. Luminosity, light, brilliance. And it took me a number of years to integrate that so that I can actually live in that frequency. So when I'm speaking, it's not just words. It's actually an activation from the frequency that I'm holding. So I could probably read the yellow pages, but the truths that are coming out, it's an activated truth. So people pick up on that, and they feel, like you just said, they feel lighter. It's like a cleansing has happened, like a reset taking place, and people come on a regular basis to get reset, to catch their vision, move back into the world to make a difference.
In the Bible, it talks about ask and you shall receive. So when we start to ask the right questions, a lot of people come to me and they're like, well, what's my first step of healing? Where should I go? I said, just ask the questions. The right book, the right healer will come to you, the right information will come to you. Can you talk a little bit about asking and receiving and how to align with that vibration of wholeness?
Now, this presence operates lawfully. And the universal law is whatever it is you ask, you're going to receive an answer at the level of your asking. So the uninitiated have to ask disempowering questions. They'll ask, what's wrong? They'll ask, who's to blame? They'll ask, why me? The universe will answer those questions. But at the level you're asking that questions, you'll get a download of all of the negative stuff happening in human consciousness, all the ways that you're hypnotized. So I steer people away from asking those kind of questions. Ask empowering questions. You ask, what gift is trying to be born in my life? What's trying to emerge? Why am I here? If you ask an empowering question, you'll get an answer. And when you get an answer, you'll then get an action to take. And then if you take that action, you'll be birthed into a way of living. And so we want to be aware that we are in a constant state of inquiry. But we want to be consciously asking a high-ordered question. How can I deliver my gift to the world? How can I activate more power in my life? How can I be a vessel for more prosperity? How can I reveal more health and vitality and vigor in my life? If you ask that question on a regular basis sincerely, you'll get an answer. It'll eventually come in a language and in a way that you can understand. As you mentioned, a book may fall off the shelf. You'll hear a question. You'll hear somebody talk next to you in a restaurant, and it's actually what you need to hear. Or somebody may call you out of the blue and offer you something that you need at that precise moment. But everything is lawful. In the beginning, it seems like coincidence. But ultimately, you'll see that it's serendipity. It's grace. And it's always happening, but your question is clearing your perceptual windows so that you can see what's happening all the time. But it's been blotted by your immature and your disempowering questions. Yeah.
So I've also heard you say, and I love this, especially when it comes to healing. So many people are in physical pain or have physical things showing up in their life, like a tumor or a diagnosis. You've said the pain pushes until the vision pulls. Yes. Can you help people make that pivot or explain what that means?
The universe, which is the outpicturing of the order of the mind of God or the mind of the presence, the universe is always expanding. Even when it contracts a little bit, it goes back to expansion. So we say that the universe is progressive. Everything is going to higher and higher frequencies. So if you're stagnant in certain areas of your life, you're actually pushed by pain. The universe seems that it's pushing you because you're stagnant. And that'll continue to happen until you're actually pulled by a higher vision. We want to be able to articulate a vision for our life, a vision of how we're going to be in service, a vision of how we're going to deliver our gifts and talents and activate our capacities. And so until you're pulled by a vision, then you find that you're nudged and you're pushed by pain. So it's not personal. There's not a deity saying, you're bad, and I'm going to give you some pain and some punishment until you're good. No, that's an immature way of looking at the presence. The presence is lawful. Everything is moving forward. And what we're seeking to do in our awakening is to embrace the evolutionary impulse of the universe, to embrace it and say yes to it, so we become pushed less and less, pulled more and more. So you literally wake up and you're like pulled by your vision. You see what you want your life to be about. You walk in that direction. The choices you make are in that direction. You can say to yourself, if what I'm about to say, eat, do, is that in alignment with my vision? Yes or no? No, it's not. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to eat that. I'm not going to do that. This is in alignment with my vision. So your actions start to be in alignment with the vision that you're learning to articulate, and then you find under grace that you're pulled. It's like a buoyancy starts to happen. It's like grace. It's like, oh, things are working out and working less and less hard. I'm being pulled by something. And so this is available to everyone, you see. Yeah.
And so you've also taught that you come into this world, we all have unique gifts to express and share, and our passions and that calling in our heart are kind of roadmaps and signs going, that's what you should do, that's what you should follow. And is dis-ease, in a way, does it manifest because we are resisting or denying the expression of these gifts that we're supposed to share?
Mm-hmm. Well, as you indicated, we come to the planet. There is a pre-birth choice that we made before we got here. We chose to be here. We're not here accidentally. And we chose to share certain gifts and talents while we were here to make a difference on the planet. So we want to be in alignment with that. Now, there are as many reasons for people to suffer from disease as there are people. Sometimes an individual is out of alignment with their pre-birth choice. There's an environmental milieu that we're involved in as well. There's a lot of toxicity on the planet. You combine that toxicity with toxic thinking, you produce a condition for dis-ease, which becomes a signal for you to look at that and to change something in your life. And so there are, this is kind of a slippery slope, because there's not like a one-to-one, this person has this disease, therefore this is the reason why. Because you can have 7 people with the same diagnosis, that's 7 different reasons for that diagnosis, you see. But there are principles behind it all. So a number of years ago, I was sitting with Oprah Winfrey, and she was asking me, before the light went on, before it was like, go, she said, Michael, I'm going to ask you why do bad things happen to good people? You only have 30 seconds to answer. She said, you can't teach a class. I said, whoops. So I opened myself up to a possible answer to this. And so she asked the question, Michael, people want to know, why do bad things happen to good people? And I said, Miss Winfrey, there are windows of manifestation. The first window is we're having a direct experience of our beliefs, thoughts, opinions, and perceptions that become a feedback. We actually experience what we believe. That's the first window. Many people know about that window. The second window is the window of listen. So let's say you have a prayer and you want to manifest more prosperity in your life, or more confidence. So you will be prepared to receive that blessing. So you might have to learn some lessons along the way. And in learning those lessons, you may not like those lessons. They may not feel good. You may think you're being picked upon, but you're actually being vibrationally prepared to receive what you've asked for. So that's the second window. It's called lesson. The third window is called blessing. Many people in their pre-birth choice said, I'm coming to Earth, but I'm going to help lift the compassion meter on the planet. It means I might go through some suffering, not because it's my karma, but because I want to lift the human race. So there are people that arrived on Earth that actually take on certain things so that people will learn, oh, we don't want that to happen on the planet anymore. We don't want another Holocaust. We don't want another African Holocaust. We don't want another slavery. And so it begins to lift the consciousness of the planet. We don't want child labor, you see. It lifts the vibration of the planet. People say, we don't want that anymore. So sometimes people take on something in order to lift the vibration. That's window number 3. It means people have come to be a blessing. Window number 4 is, as long as there are thought forms of lack, limitation, scarcity, separation that's moving through the human consciousness, someone will experience that until they wake up. Similar to number 1. We experience our own thinking, but it's on a groupthink vibration. So, yeah, we have a pre-birth choice, and we experience our thinking, and then there's some subtleties to that as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do we navigate that fine line between being co-creators with life and responsible for what we're thinking and feeling and our beliefs about life, because they will dictate our experience to a certain extent, but then not feel like we're to blame or feel guilt and shame if illness or scarcity or some major challenge shows up in our life? Yeah. Like, oh, I created this, and beat ourselves up.
It's a very good question. First of all, we're aware that a thought is a unit of mental energy. And energy is never created or destroyed. Energy transmutes, just like ice can transmute into water or transmute into gas based on the condition. So our thinking transmutes into experience, It transmutes into perception and experience. So with that as a fundamental teaching, we navigate that through context determines our perception. So we teach people that they're living and moving and having their beingness in a progressive universe that's for us. We're not living in a universe that's against us. So we begin by understanding that life is for us and not against us. We have to have that as our bottom line. As we're beginning to articulate our vision, we start to walk in that direction. So we're co-creating with the progressive universe. Now, what we don't do is shame ourselves, blame ourselves, go into a deep sense of guilt if something happens. I teach people never to say to people, oh, how did you create that in your life? Because that creates a level of shame. Those are immature questions that neophytes ask in the beginning. Instead, you can ask something like, what is the meaning of what appears to be? What is the meaning of what appears to be happening in my life now? If you ask that question, you start to go underneath without blame to see what was going on, what was being cleansed, what thoughts were we having. You can begin to ask it in a much more gentle way. People have to understand that we're all growing, all unfolding at our own pace. There's nothing inherently wrong with us. There's something inherently right with us. And so we want to coax ourselves into a greater awareness of what's right rather than what's wrong, so that what's right, what's eternal, what's forever, begins to be the activity of our awareness. But it's a good question because so many people take themselves down the rabbit hole. Look what I did. I made this big mistake. And the ego will take that and use it. The ego doesn't care whether you're being egocentric and say, I'm the greatest, or whether you're saying, I'm the worst, as long as the attention is on you, you see. So we don't want to give too much to work with.
Right. Yeah, so fear and victimhood is often where one might go if they get a really terrible diagnosis. How can we, I think you've said before, like the potential is always bigger than the problem. How can we break out of that victimhood and not let anyone tell us what's possible for our life?
Yeah. First of all, there's a difference between diagnosis and prognosis. So diagnosis describes your symptoms and what the possible issues are, but the prognosis is up to you and this great presence in your practice of using these universal laws. So you thank the individuals giving the diagnosis. You're grateful you got a diagnosis, whatever that is. Oh, that's what that pain is. Thank you very much. Now the prognosis is up to me. So you have to self-empower. You have to really take your power back from the minor deity, MD, and come to the major deity, which is the divine within you. And now you begin to use your life as a exploratory research project. How can I heal? How can I sustain life? How can I improve my life? You have to ask those kind of questions so that you're guided to the right modalities, the right technologies, the right way of thinking, the right physical practices, the right nutrition. You take yourself on as a research project, you see. And if you take yourself on as a research project rather than a victim just succumbs. Oh my God, I just got a diagnosis and a prognosis that I only have 2 years to live. Oh my God, or, okay, I'm taking this on as a research project. Recently, it came to my attention, a friend of the family's got a diagnosis and a prognosis. And the prognosis was, say goodbye to your family. You might have 3 months. So because there was nothing else that they could do for her in a particular realm, she went to a more holistic. She said, well, I have nothing to lose. 3 months, I have nothing to lose. And she began to clean her body. She began to do other modalities. She began to do, organic vitamin C. She began to do ozone. Now that was 2 years ago. She's still here. So she said, I have nothing to lose. Let me do something else. And she began to clean out her body. She stopped eating sugar. She stopped eating a lot of meat byproducts. She went very deep into another path. And her body started to respond. And that was a couple of years ago. She's still hanging around. She's still improving. So she took the diagnosis, but she didn't take the prognosis. And so far, she's gotten 2 years more with her kids, from 3 months to 2 years. I don't think that's a bad deal. And maybe she'll get another. Maybe she'll get 5 more. Who knows? You know. But I appreciate the fact that she became self-empowered. She also developed a group of people that would tap in with her and pray with her. So it would keep a certain frequency and vibration going as well. She went deep and got empowered. Yeah.
Yeah, so talk about community and how important that is. You know, we're all connected energetically. We're all, you know, human in different clothing, but we're all, you know, unconditional love and source and divine energy at our core. Talk about how crucial community is when it comes to healing.
You know, much of the research has shown that when dealing with seniors, when a senior is in a healthy community, a spiritual community, a community where people are talking and supporting each other, the longevity rates go up. What I teach is that community, spiritual community, grants you immunity. Community grants you immunity from the lower frequencies of life. And so the kind of community we're talking about, a community that has conversations about possibility, potential, creativity. Now, when you're in that kind of community, your thoughts, which then create a different chemical cascade in your body, so you start to produce tonic chemicals rather than toxic chemicals, and it amplifies your immune system, develops a level of coherence around the hemispheres of the brain. There's more creativity, there's more health, there's more vitality, the aging process slows down. So community is very, very important. So if you have, we have people that have smaller communities within the larger community. So they may come to Agape, which is a large community, but within that smaller community, they may take classes and then they develop 4 or 5 people that they hang out with that speaks to possibility. They may have a spiritual practitioner that they meet with on a monthly basis that speaks to possibility. And so they're not around people that are always in gossip or complaining or negative mind chatter, woe is me, guess is the latest bad thing that happened, trying to outdo each other with what negative thing has happened in their life. You know, they surround themselves with individuals that are optimistic, that are what I call consciously naive, meaning that good is always conspiring to happen in one's life. You hang in that space. And that kind of community grants immunity from the lower frequencies. And your perception changes. Life becomes a lot better. So community is very, very powerful in the healing modality.
And so I love, I've always, you know, certain things stick out of my mind. And where 2 or more are gathered,
yes,
the prayer becomes more powerful.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about, like, the most effective way to pray? Because often we're, you know, say we got a diagnosis, we're begging God, like, just let me survive and I'll be a better human. You know what I mean?
Right,
Is
right.
there a more productive,
Yeah.
powerful way to pray?
Yeah, well, first of all, I like, you know, your reference to the teaching where 2 or more are gathered. And that applies in 2 ways. It applies with people. You know, we have 2 or 3 people together. They create a field. Everything is a field. Magnetism, gravity, it's a field. So when you have 2 or 3, 5, 8, 20, 100 people together in vision, that creates a field as well. So when 2 or 3 are gathered in the truth, it creates a vibrational field. But it also means 2 or 3 gathered. If you have the conscious mind and the subconscious mind together, then the superconscious mind can take over. And this is where we enter into prayer. When your conscious mind combines with your subconscious, superconscious takes over. Instead of begging a God or something that's out there, you're basically allowing your conscious mind to begin to inform your subconscious mind about possibility. So you begin to pray affirmatively. You begin to go into a sense of gratitude, thanksgiving and appreciation for your life. You begin to recognize a presence that's everywhere. You consciously unify with this presence. I am what thou art. Thou art what I am. There's no distance between me and God. If God is omnipresent, that means God must be present right here. You see, not out there, but here, that the innermost God and the uppermost God are the same God. Now I can declare and decree what is so. I can say, based on my communion with the presence, I am declaring that my life is a good life, that my body temple is a temple of health and vitality and vigor, that everything is working together for my good. I'm getting into the spirit of my conscious mind, going to my subconscious mind, that my superconscious mind, the spirit, can now come through me, and then I come back into a sense of thanksgiving that what? That it's already done. Then I release it. I release this word and watch it manifest. Now, throughout the course of the day, I may have to come back to that until I'm living in that feeling tone, that vibration. And then I begin to watch as that manifests. Now, it manifests instantly. For the moment you raise your frequency in prayer, the cascade of chemicals changes from cortisol to great endorphins. So it happens instantly. And then as you prolong that state, the manifestation in your so-called physical world begins to show up as well. The body temple, the mental body, the emotional body, and the body of your affairs start to reflect that sense of coherence around the feeling tone of oneness. Basically, an individual prays based on their concept of God. When we have a small, immature concept of God, we have God as a man in the sky, and we have to appease God or please God some kind of way in order to get a blessing. We've matured spiritually, and we know that God is not a man in the sky. God is a presence that's never an absence. And so we can commune with this presence rather than beg the presence. So our prayer must reflect our expanded awakening. So we commune. We come into the spirit of joy. We come into the spirit of celebration. We come into the spirit of gratitude, and we learn to receive what's eternally being given. That's real meaningful affirmative prayer.
So I imagine, just like you said, prayer and getting into that, the gratitude and affirmative prayer will switch the chemicals, switch the chemistry in your body from one of stress and fear and worry and cortisol and adrenaline to more healing chemistry that's being released. So spiritual practices, the more you do this, the more you can embody that healing because you're releasing that healing chemistry on a regular basis. So meditation, prayer, what are the importance of spiritual practices today?
Yeah, you used a good word, and the word was embodiment. What we want to do is become a living embodiment of our prayer, and spiritual practice allows us to stabilize and sustain the higher frequencies. So, affirmative prayer, meditation, life visioning. People enter into the physical practice of yoga, qigong, pranayama, breath work. These are all practices that allow us to not only have insight into reality with a capital R reality, but also to sustain that awareness so it's not fleeting. It's not just a memory of something that happened 2 years ago, but we're actually living it. We become integrated into the higher frequencies so that year after year after year, you see that your life has changed from who you used to be, and more of the real you, the authentic, eternal you is coming forward. So this is not a fly-by-night kind of thing. It's an encouragement of practice. Practice, practice, practice as a way of living, and you do something every day. People sometimes say, every day? Well, I say, do you brush your teeth every day? Do you clean your body every day? Yes, every day. You want to take an inner shower, same way you take an outer shower, every day, so that people get to meet the real you and not meeting all of the undigested fear and worry that's on the surface of your mind. So practice is extremely important.
So, again, when we are in fear, we're very attached to the physical. Like, there's a tumor in my body, there's a diagnosis, there's a prognosis. I love when, the way of looking at life, that the challenges we experience are to make us grow. It's pressure, it's fire, it's alchemy to make us grow into our greater self. So you often mention, an illness could be a cosmic 2x4 knocking you over the head. And you've gotten little signs along the way that maybe we've denied or resisted or ignored until we get something like a major diagnosis that forces us to look and forces us to grow. Can you talk about disease as a wake-up call?
Yeah, disease and all challenges can be a wake-up call. As I said earlier, the universe is progressive. It's moving forward. It's expanding to reveal the infinite nature of the presence. So when we're stagnant, we get little 2x4s. And so the disease, the dis-ease, something is not in ease in our body temple. It can be a thought form. It can be the pressure from bad nutrition or lack of nutrition. It could be the result of not moving the body, becoming stagnant, so the energy is stagnant, there's no exercise. And so as that stagnation creates the condition for disease, we don't look at it like, oh, somebody's doing something to me. Look at it like, what's the meaning of this? Let me wake up. When was the last time I had a good glass of water? I've been drinking all these carbonated sugar waters. Maybe I need to drink water. Maybe I need to eat a vegetable. Maybe I need to walk around the block. Maybe I need to meditate. Maybe I need to study. Maybe I need to get into a community. Maybe I need to pray. Yeah, it's all waking up. Challenges ultimately activate the latent potential that's within us. Everyone has infinite potential. There aren't special people. They're just people who use their challenges to grow and to practice. Someone, except for prodigies who brought things in from a last lifetime, you don't just jump on the piano and start playing music. You practice. You practice. You practice. And then one day, noise becomes music. Then the music of your soul gets interpreted through your fingers, and you get to express it. And we say, oh, that person's very special. Yeah, but you can see the years of that person going to the piano every single day until excellence emerged. So we practice. We practice. We practice. Embodiment takes place. And then people say, how do you stay peaceful when all these challenges are going on in your life? Practice, practice, practice. How do you stay in joy when you heard this bad news about what's happening in the country or what's happening in the world or what's happening in your family? Practice, practice, practice until you're able to maintain that awareness in spite of and sometimes even because of the challenges that we're facing.
So say a loved one that is facing a challenge, is facing a serious disease, and they may not be open to some of the principles that you teach. They may not even be open to holistic or alternative methods. They just want to go to their specialist and take the prognosis at their word and, begin that downward spiral. How do we, as someone who loves and cares about them and wants them to thrive, how do we get them to see the light?
The idea is that we have to love our loved ones. That's the first frequency. We have to just be in love with them so that we're not creating resistance, trying to give them something that they're resisting. In one of the scriptures, it says, do not cast pearls before swine, meaning if you throw some valuables to a pig, the pig doesn't want that. The pig wants food, wants garbage or whatever. So if you're trying to force something down somebody's throat that doesn't want it, it creates a resistance. So we don't do that. We love. And in the process of just loving that individual and praying for that individual, not even in front of them, just in our own altar of our own home, we're just praying for the individual, then we're guided as to do what we can for that individual until resistance is dissolved. So when we see you, they're not putting up a barrier. Oh, here comes so-and-so. They're going to tell me not to do this and to do this. I don't want to hear it. They feel, oh, someone's coming that just loves me. Now they're open. Then they may ask you a question. You seem happy. You seem you don't carry that stress. What do you do? Oh, well, I go to this place called agape, or I find that when I stopped eating such and so and started eating this, it helped me a lot. Or then once they ask a question, now you can share. But until they ask a question, you're trespassing. You're trespassing on their paradigm and on their belief. So you become an example, you know, and then they say, you know what? I heard a few years ago you had a particular issue and you don't have that issue anymore, do you? What'd you do? Oh, well, doctor told me I was going to have to take this pill for the rest of my life. I said, no, I'm not. You know, so the idea is love. Love is the most powerful healing agent on the planet. And sometimes you can just love someone into health. I've discovered a long time ago, if a person is not receptive, I do the best that I can. I try to debate my own frustration about it, because I know that I could come in and say, listen, if you stop doing that and start doing this, but I can't do it. I just love. Hey, how you doing? Just love. Just love.
Just love. I love it. Two directions I want to go, but on the planet right now, and probably in every time in history, it changes in degree and the way it appears, but there's a lot of tension, a lot of stress, a lot of fear, a lot of divisiveness. You've often talked about, you know, when paradigm is shifting, there's a breakdown before a breakthrough. How can people that are so passionate about a certain issue, or vaccines or pharmaceuticals or this political party or this, you know, that or the other, how can we not get sucked in and dragged down by that fear, and how can we be the change?
Yeah. You know, there's a lot of material here. First of all, this generation we're living now, we're bombarded with more information via technology and the electromagnetic fields that it creates in one day than people a number of years ago got an entire year, and before that an entire lifetime. So our nervous systems are bombarded. So there's a lot more stress that becomes distress in one's field, one's nervous system. Many people are on edge. And we're at a space where the global brain has been created. You can talk to someone in Yugoslavia right now via your computer, your phone, whatever. So the global brain is in existence. What we're seeking to do is create the global heart, where all of this technology is basically used for unity, for love, for information sharing, etc., not the hatosphere that it becomes at times, where people get on whatever apparatus and criticize this person and tear down this person, I don't agree, and they end up fighting rather than bringing it together. So we are in a paradigm shift. Something is dying and something is being born. The sense of separation, scarcity, lie, lack, limitation, it's dying. We live in a field of abundance, and that's what's being born right now. But as you indicated, whenever something is dying, it makes a lot of noise. So we have people wanting to go back in history, you know, when they think things were better, things of that particular nature, you know, and that's a fear-based model of the world. And so how do we not get snagged in? First of all, we learn to create our own atmosphere and carry it with us. We are spiritual astronauts, and we create our own atmosphere. So before we even leave our house, we create our own atmosphere. That atmosphere is one of gratitude, thanksgiving, appreciation, and how am I going to gift my giftedness to the world? I don't want to go out into the world and create more fear. That's what politicians do. Basically, create fear for the masses and then say, look to me, I'll set you free. So they end up creating an issue, and then they try to save people from the issue. No. What we seek to do is live by the possibility and vision, have our own inner atmosphere of peace and love and harmony, and then what manifests in our life? Possibilities, opportunities. All of that begins to manifest because we're the field of it, you see. Now, people that are in fear, they get snagged. It's a hypnotic spell. They get snagged, this or that. You versus me. We versus they. They live in a sense of separation. And they have evidence that what they're saying is right because they're producing that reality. You see? So the idea is to step back, see vision, articulate it, and then walk in the direction of that vision. And then you pull people together rather than pulling people apart. The idea is everything is energy. We talked about that. We're vibrational beings. So if you're more against something than you are for something, then you are perpetuating what you are against. The old adage, what you resist persists. So if you're in resistance to what you say is wrong, you're actually giving it strength. So you actually have to shift your energy and articulate what you want to manifest. You want the world to be beautiful, magnificent? Then you have to articulate ways and means. I know an individual that's an environmentalist. Now, she used to be totally against the big corporations coming down, taking the trees out of the rainforest, and she was passionate about that. And she wasn't wrong about that. Now, she's planted millions of trees. She's used all that energy. She flies around the different countries. She's engaging the governments to actually plant, hopefully, more trees that are being dug up. So she's taken all that passion, and instead of putting her attention on those who are, quote unquote, doing wrong, she's now placing her attention on actually framing herself to actually doing good work on the planet, which is also educating people as well. So people would rather hear a vision than a rant. Ultimately, a vision pulls you, they get inspired. Like Dr. King speaking about having a dream about all people living together in a world of peace. People would rather hear a vision than a rant, you see. So we need to walk with vision. And then, as our Native American brothers and sisters would remind us, walk a mile in your brother or sister's moccasins. See life from somebody else's point of view. You don't have to agree with it. You just see it. And once you see life from another person's point of view, you have compassion. Oh, that's why they're afraid. That's why they're in fear. That's why they're doing that. They're afraid. Now I have compassion. Many years ago, something happened to me. There was a fireman. A friend of mine and we were pointing, we had called the fire department because a fire was in a house. And we were young boys, like 12 years old in Boy Scouts. And so we called the fire department, and then we ran to the direct room where the fire was. And when the fireman got off the fire truck, he said, "Get out of the way, you little niggers," like that. And I'm like 11 years old. The energy went into my body. It was like, I'm just trying to help. I remember the energy that just went into me. It was like, wow, I don't matter. And I remember on the way home, I tore off my Boy Scout uniform. And that never went back to being a Boy Scout ever again after that day. And I started to act out a little bit, and ultimately used the energy to say, I'm going to build a better world. But later on, I did a lot of forgiveness work around that fireman. And one day, I had meditation. And for some reason, this fireman comes into my mind again. And I said to myself, I forgave this guy a long time ago. Why is he coming up now? All of a sudden, I said, okay, he's here. Let me forgive. So I did my forgiveness work. Then I was lifted out of my body, placed in his body. And I could see the world from his perspective. I could see this limited point of view where he was run by racism and bigotry. It was this fear-based world. And when I came out of that, I had nothing but compassion for him. He had to live an entire life in this very limited point of view in which he did not honor people that had different color skins, that were born in different parts of the world, that spoke different languages, that had different languages. He was living in this little slither of reality. And my heart just opened up, and I had compassion. And I knew what it meant. Walk in another person's shoes. It's like, he could not have acted any way other than that moment. I got the brunt of the energy of it, but ultimately it led me to a higher calling, you see. So rather than right or wrong, we bless everyone, we articulate a vision, We try to see things from another person's point of view. At least it's going to do is birth compassion.
And I think the way that that applies to healing is if someone wronged you in the past, you had this emotional wounds that you haven't healed and it's now physically manifesting into something else. You know, if you're resisting forgiving that person, if you're resisting the disease that's happening in you, that energy, you know, you've got to get to that point of surrender. You've got to forgive and let go and realize everyone's doing the best they can with their product of their environment, you know?
Yeah, for real. Everybody's doing the best they can. This is why I teach that all 100% of forgiveness is self-forgiveness, because you're actually letting go of the toxic thought and perception and interpretation of the event. You're letting that go in forgiveness. You're not letting somebody off the hook if they abused you or did something. You're actually letting yourself off the hook, the emotional hook, so that you can be free. So why walk around allowing for that particular experience to drag you down when you can forgive and be free? All forgiveness is self-forgiveness.
So I feel like very few of us are equipped, unless you're raised in agape, taught from a young age to express emotions, feel emotions, process emotions in a healthy way. We suppress, we repress, and now we see this opioid crisis where people are numbing their pain, anxiety. How can we turn this around and empower people to feel and express in a healthy way?
Yeah, we've become a society where it's not okay to be sad. It's not okay to have righteous indignation, you know, unless you're in the political arena. It's not okay to feel what you're feeling. And we want to give people permission to feel what they're feeling. If you're sad, it's okay. If someone died and you're sad that they're not around, there's nothing wrong with you being sad. There's nothing wrong with you going through the grieving process. And what we've done is people have become so afraid of the emotions as they come up. They want to get a quick fix, something outside themselves, and it ends up numbing them. And people are stopping their own evolution. Oftentimes, when you're growing spiritually, you know, as Carl Jung reminds us that oftentimes enlightenment is when the unconscious becomes conscious. So when things that are there that have been repressed or suppressed start to be teased into consciousness, you don't feel good. There's nothing wrong with not feeling good. And as they come to the surface, what do? You get to observe it. Your observation changes it on a subatomic level. You get to embrace it. You get to release it. You get to understand it. You get to be free. But if you suppress it or repress it, then it's still in you. Even if you take a drug and you don't feel it for a while, it's still operating. And eventually, it has to surface. An explosion, depression, suicidal thoughts, a disease. Everything is energy. It's going to be transmuted some way, somehow. So what we want people to do is take responsibility for their life, not blame. Take responsibility. Feel what you're feeling. It has a message for you. The emotions are the subset of previously held thoughts, beliefs, and perceptions. They become emotions, you see. You cannot have emotion unless you've had a perception. In other words, if a snake rolls through here, you have to have some kind of perception that the snake might be dangerous. If you've been raised with snakes, let's say, oh, snake, you know. But if you think all snakes are dangerous, still, oh my God. So you've had toxic chemicals roll through your system. You've had an emotional reaction to a perception. So your emotions are very valuable. They're giving you a previously held perception that what? You can change. But you can't change it if you suppress it all the time, you see.
Yeah, so a common perception that some people might have are, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, and these things will dictate emotions that if you're never feeling them, you know, by the time you're 30, 40, 50 years old, they're going to express in a big, painful way, right?
Absolutely. People carry an existential dread, and they carry a perception of a lack of self-esteem, self-love, lack of self-appreciation. That creates a filter over life. They're looking at life through this filter. It's like looking at the sun through the clouds and thinking the sun's not shining. The sun's perpetually shining, but you're looking at the cloud. So people are looking at this content, lack of self-love, lack of self-appreciation, lack of self-worth, and they're thinking that the spiritual sun's not shining. I'm not good enough. No, I'm the exception. God is everywhere except here. And so we're teaching people how to see through the clouds, how to dissolve the clouds, how to realize they're just clouds, that the sun is still shining, and begin to take on a different lift in life, different frequency, you see, and that each of us are extraordinary beings, amazing, beautiful beings. That's our premise, and that's the truth.
So someone comes to you with a diagnosis, and they've got 3 months, 6 months, then there's nothing else their doctor can do. How do you guide them and pivot them out of that fear to encourage them and inspire them that they can do this?
A couple of things. Always, and it just comes out of my mouth, I always say something like, you got a diagnosis. The prognosis is up to you. Let's begin to work on this. Someone once said, they tell me I'm dying. I said, well, we're all dying. All they said to you was yours is speed it up a little bit. Let's see if we can slow it down, you see. So it's like, it's not that I'm making light of it, but I try to take the person's attention, grab their attention from the prognosis to possibility. Let's work on this. You know, you begin to think and do something about this. So I seek to give them a sense of empowerment. All is not lost. And then, you know, I have so many examples of people who have diagnoses that are still alive, you know. And I actually think that this should be some kind of newsprint, some kind of, maybe you can do this and heal, some kind of outlet where people are saying, I got a diagnosis 7 years ago, I was supposed to be gone 3 months. I'm still here. I got a diagnosis, I'd be blind in 3 years. I still see. I got a diagnosis, you know. So people begin to see possibility. And right now, people are, they're just weighed down with impossibility. You know, I know of so many cases where people should have been dead. For the grace of the infinite and participation, they're living a great life, you know. So anyway, I try to steer people away from the linear prognosis into a much more expanded prognosis if they participate in their own life. You have to participate in your own life. You can't just say, oh, well, the doctor said this is what's going to happen. No, no, no. That's abdicating your authority to someone else. Participate. At least for the rest of your life, you're doing something meaningful. I invite people to take their life on as a research project. Since you've gotten the diagnosis, they say it's over, 4, 5, 6 months. Why don't you use your life as a research project and begin to explore some other options? Take notes, journal, and see what happens. You do something that's totally outside the bounds of what you would normally do. You begin to think differently. You begin to laugh. You begin to hydrate. You begin to change your nutrition. Take this as a research project. What do you have to lose? Nothing.
And then is there anything else that has come through in your teachings lately that you think would be beneficial to share?
I think that we're in the process of redefining success. When you look at the different structures in our life, body, temple, relationships, personal prosperity and success, people think that if you get that area of your life together, you're successful. I teach that's preparation for success. That once those particular areas of your life are stabilized, now you have the strength to give your gifts to change the world for the better. So previously, having a lot, accumulating a lot, having the perfect body temple, having the perfect relationship was successful. That's preparation. Now is that you got that together, what you gonna do? How is the world gonna be better? What's your legacy going to be now that you have the strength to actually make a difference? So I think that that takes away a lot of anxiety because you're living for something bigger than your little life. If you live for your little life, you're wrapped up in a small package. But if you live for a bigger life, then all of life is on your side and can use you. Much more joy, much more bliss.